sit back down.
All right. Yeah, thanks for coming. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too. And a little bit surreal. Big fan of your story.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I mean, we're obviously, I think like you're a little bit of a celebrity here. I heard there were like many of the engineers at Rippling recognized you and were like, oh my gosh, that's the Cursor founder. So we're huge fans of Cursor at Rippling and obviously use it extensively. It's been a huge help to us.
Well, honored to hear that. And we are massive fans of Rippling. It is actually, I think, maybe the first piece of software that we bought.
That's great.
We're very happy users of it.
That's
and
awesome.
we went a really long time without hiring anyone to run payroll. I was actually the payroll admin for a long time.
I'm still the payroll admin at Rippling.
I've heard. Yeah.
Okay, cut. I think that's a rip. Bro. That's all we needed. We got all the B-roll we need here. So actually, I'm curious. I know that there are a lot of companies. Obviously, Cursor's made a huge impact in the coding space, and I see a ton of companies that are saying they want to be, Cursor for X.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious if you have a view on what that means to you, and in particular, are there elements, particularly from a user experience perspective, on how sort of AI agents interact with sort of other software that you think you really nailed that are going to endure as sort of standards, and also maybe are there things that you think need to change?
Cursor kind of came out of a thought exercise where the way Cursor started was my co-founders and I, we had worked on programming for a long time. We'd also worked on AI for a while too. And there were a couple of moments in 2021 that got us really excited about working on AI, not in academia, but actually working on AI in the real world. And we were very interested in a particular shape of company, which was you pick an area of knowledge work, and then you build the best pane of glass to do that knowledge work in as AI gets better. You get lots of people to use your thing. And then you get this flywheel going of you can see where AI is helping people, where AI is not helping people. When AI is not helping people, then you can see how humans are correcting it. And you can use that to actually feed into the underlying tech, make the models better, and then push the puck forward on the technology, which then gets this flywheel going if you're then going to reshape the UI. But that formula of pick an area of knowledge work, build the AI forward product for it, and then use the data and distribution you get from that to then improve the underlying tech. We were actually interested in that before we settled on programming in particular. And we actually had this false start where we worked on, we saw programming. We thought that programming was going to be too competitive of a space to enter. And we thought about, or we actually worked on building a version of Cursor for mechanical engineers for a bit and training 3D autocomplete models and helping people who deal with SolidWorks and CAD. But that kind of formula for a company, I don't think is programming specific, and I think that there will be versions of that exist in all sorts of different areas of knowledge work. And I think programming is one of the first ones to happen because the tech is especially good for programming. And so that that form of Cursor for X, I think will exist. And
just studying how your users interact with the AI and using that to improve the underlying system, I guess.
Yeah, basically training custom models from that, and then architecting the UI around the AI as it gets better. And then the patterns, two of the big ways that people use Cursor, one is this autocomplete pattern, and then another one is this agent pattern of you delegating work to a bot. I think both of those work in lots of other fields. And autocomplete can be especially useful for programmers because it's often very predictable what they're going to do next. Because if you're in the middle of a 3-hour-long refactor, the stuff that you've done in the past is very indicative of what you're going to do in the future. And then, this form factor of you are basically talking with this artifact that you're building with the AI, agent style. I think that could be happening for many more areas of knowledge work. And I think that there's a bunch of product overhang there where people just you have to kind of nail the details. And some of those details have to do with the robustness of the models and their accuracy. And some of the details have to do with speed too.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your BugBot launch and how that's going. Someone on your team told us that we were actually the largest BugBot users by usage. I don't know if that's still true.
I think that's no longer true, but it was true at one point. You guys were awesome early customers.
I don't know what that says about us. Maybe we have a lot of bugs. I don't know.
It means you're pushing code quickly.
Yeah. So. I was talking about it with Albert. It sounds really cool. It sounds like basically you take an interpreted language and catch a lot of things that you would otherwise only see at runtime. Much earlier in the process when it's much less expensive to catch those bugs.
The way BugBot works is it's actually pretty simple. Every PR that's created in your org, we're going to spend time in the background trying to verify its correctness and find bugs using AI. And so it uses a mix of Cursor's code base understanding, a mix of different models, and also increasingly, we're going to tend toward a world where you can actually, in the background, be running the code and trying to verify it. But it has really taken off. It had like deep PMF internally, much more than we expected. And then it has been awesome to see it grow. And some things that surprised us were just how quickly at some companies it's become actually required to now have this AI review step before you merge code in.
I think it's required here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And another thing that's surprised us is the false positive rate. So we've done a bunch of work on both spending a bunch of compute on helping you find the gnarliest bugs, but then also not bothering developers. And so across all customers, the FPR, so like the set of bugs that are flagged as bugs that someone doesn't actually end up fixing, they kind of just ignore it. Maybe just because it's a styling error, or maybe it's something that's not actually an issue. That's around 1/2 of the things that get reported. So 1/2 of the things are real bugs that end up getting fixed by the programmer.
Wow.
And so I've done a bunch of work on that and are really excited about that.
I'm curious, like one of the things, probably like my least favorite parts of software development to be involved in at Rippling are migrations. And inevitably there are these things that like you start a company, there are decisions that you make that are maybe practical in the early days that as you grow no longer work. And you've got to kind of like rebuild the foundations of the system. Like what are the specific things that we need, or that, I don't know if you could share what you guys are working on that will sort of unlock this? Like,
what are one of the migrations that you guys are working on? Is it moving tech stacks, or is it doing some big change to, data schemas?
Well, I was thinking mostly like big changes to data schemas, like the sort of, when if the architecture of the system needs to change, the data models need to be done differently.
Yeah. I think migrations are really hard.
They're also like the least fun, which is why.
Yeah, yeah. I actually think that there's probably things one could build with like the state of the models right now for migrations if you tailored it to a specific tech stack. We have, unfortunately, decided to be a really horizontal tool. And so I think that there are a bunch of opportunities to pick like a particular vertical, particular tech stack, specialize there, and build like a pointy, even better product. And we just have said no to that. So I think that there.
You mean like Python, or like like a language, or
yeah, like if you were building a like
within Python, like how specific?
To use like an outdated example, like if you were going to do like Python 2 to Python 3, I think that you could do lots of specific hacks for that, plus the current state of the models. You could probably make a pretty good Python 2 to Python 3 system. I think there's a couple things that are that's needed. I think they need more code base understanding. So they need to be able to ingest Rippling's 30 million lines of code and actually understand them, and not just like architecturally get that into the context window, but actually understand all of that code. And some of the ways in which these models are trained, there's like an open question about how we're actually going to get to a world where you can understand tens of millions of tokens. And then you need to be able to run the code with something like a migration. It's not going to be something where like you come out and it just works. And so computer using, I think, is also a bottleneck for some of this stuff, like being able to actually run Rippling's GUI and then poke around and QA things. Or being able to have like the right infrastructure integration to run all of your QA tests, like automated tests, and then react to the output. But so, yeah, I think a bunch of it's in the underlying models. I think that there is a specific product you could build for that right now, but we've tried to, our product philosophy has been to try to stay very horizontal.
If you look on Twitter, it's dangerous to look on Twitter, but there are a lot of people that sort of say, look, with AI companies, the world has fundamentally changed. You really don't need very many employees. I'm curious, like, how you guys think about that at Cursor. Like, what do you, like, actually, how many employees are you guys today?
Oh, we're 150 people, so.
That's incredible, and crazy amount of revenue for that size of employee base.
Yeah.
Where do you think you'll be?
Feels big to us, so.
Yeah. Where do you
Like
think you'll be a year from now?
We have hiring goals, but they have really big asterisks around them where with the speed that we've grown, we will pull the brakes if it feels like we're not growing properly.
Yeah.
That's everything from like culture breaking down, like hiring too many sellers for the pipeline you have, like the bar going down, people not being onboarded properly. And so far, I think we've actually grown pretty well, and it's mostly been bottlenecked around like how many great people you can find. But yeah, I think that we might end the year at, something like 250 people.
Got it.
And how do we think about the size of teams? I do think you can do a bunch more as one person across a bunch of different functions. I have a very, very small support team relative to the volume that we handle. I think that we're maybe 20 people in support right now.
Oh, wow.
For many millions of users, like every day. But then, yeah, in engineering, I think that engineers can do a lot more. But it's so easy to underestimate how far professional software engineering is from being solved. The migration point kind of hits us home, where I think that it's easy to underrate amongst people who don't program every day how different the experience of building something from scratch is from being in Rippling's 30 million lines of code and having to change something and having the mass and weight of this existing bundle of logic, like this ball of mud that you need to move around. And as an example, like the New York Times, which is a customer of ours, spends maybe roughly 150 million or 200 million on software R&D per year. And you don't think of the New York Times as a software company. So yeah, I think that programming is really far from being solved. People can do much more, but it's the ROI of adding the next person is actually like all the more higher because of that. And the scope of what we want to do as a company is big. And so I don't actually think it will change the hiring trajectory for us right now. At steady state, a few years into the future, I am really curious about if you can build a really consequential technology company that kind of stays capped around 1,000, 2,000 people. But we'll see.
1,000, 2,000 people still quite a lot.
Yeah, but much smaller than the biggest.
Yeah, than tens of thousands for sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how one of the things I saw in sort of other interviews that you talked about was the sort of ceiling in some of the work that you guys do being very high, that there's actually enormous room to improve very dramatically over the existing way of doing things. And I think you're at 500 million now in ARR. I don't know if you can say.
That's what's reported.
That's what's reported.
Got it. Yeah, I think we've published that over that number. Yes.
Yeah. And that was probably 2 weeks ago. So now it's much higher or something, but do you guys need sales and marketing? How do you think about those types of investments in your business? And is there a point at which they'll be required, or, what's your sort of take on how companies like yours should be thinking about those functions?
I think sales and marketing are both important. I think it depends on the market when you need to layer that in and how far you can get without sales and marketing. And we're in a market where end users are incredibly important for the buying decision, even within companies. It's very hard to force on a programmer a code editor that they don't want to use. It's kind of like search engines, where if you think that X tool is better, you can actually use that without disrupting your entire team. I think that probably over time that will start to change. But that dynamic of end users matter a ton for the buying decision. They have a lot of power within organizations. It's a little bit of a single player decision. Means that the highest order bid in our market is just having the best product. And so we have relentlessly kind of had horse blinders on that for a long time. We do now have sales, and we serve large customers. And we're actually really excited about that. And
how large is your sales organization?
Roughly 40 people right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What's the quota annually for a rep that's selling Cursor?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. But
don't know if you're allowed to say
it. It's really high.
It's really high. Is it like $10 million or something? Because normally in SaaS you think of this as being a million, a little over $1 million a year per rep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bump the order of magnitude. So I think that this is a consequence of just there are really useful products to build.
Yeah, of course.
And the difference between solution 1 and solution 2 in markets like ours actually can just be really big. And also the ROI of the spend is just, you run the numbers, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see the first Forrester report on this stuff. But so people, they want to buy the best thing. Even if you gave away the third place thing for free, it wouldn't be worth it.
How do you think about the trade-offs between distribution and margin? Obviously, I think that's a thing that a lot of AI companies are thinking about, or it's a big question, I think, for the industry. And so with this high ceiling, my guess is you want to sort of focus on distribution now. When does that change? Does that, at what point do you think that needs to change?
And definitely, just going back to that previous point, do want to underscore that I think a lot of this is just the physics of the market we're in, where now there is a really high ceiling. there are really, really useful products to build. And so I don't think it's a, far from purely created by us phenomena. There's this book called I'm Feeling Lucky, and it was written by one of the first product marketers at Google. It kind of gives you a window into Google's execution in the early days. And it sounds very chaotic and messy. I think that in that market too, like the physics were just focusing on having the best product was the highest order bid for the company. But how do we think about the distribution side of things now? I think that we are in a market where there's a lot of overlap between what end users want down market and what end users want up market. And so for a long time, we just focused on startups, mid-market companies. We liked focusing on those folks because that's kind of a crucible in which you can test the product. And it really pushes you to have the best product because the way the procurement process works down market is just picking kind of the best thing. But we got lots of inbound from companies that we had really respected for a long time. And we went and tested the product within some larger customers, spent a bunch of time talking with larger customers. And it seemed clear to us that there were going to be economies of scale here. And one company was going to take the entire market because there's enough overlap between end users down market and up market. And so that's when we started building out more of the sales and post-sales side of things to be able to serve larger customers. And then the way this feeds into margin, we think it's important. Already, to be clear, we think it's important to maintain when you're serving larger customers, a sustainable margin over that can then feed into building the best product possible. So I think that the big shift to watch for is how fast does the use of compute amongst like an individual developer grow relative to like the token cost coming down. And I do think that there's a chance we're headed for a world where in the next year, yes, token costs kind of continue to go down predictably, but it gets easier and easier to do more things in parallel and to, as one person, orchestrate more and more compute. And so you can, I think from that, like start to see these bills go up. And I think rightly so, actually. Like I think that
you think actually the compute costs will go up over time?
I think probably over the next year, yeah.
Wow.
And not on a per token basis, but just because you will be able to do so much more as one person. Yeah, so on a per person basis. But to be clear, like dollar per line of code written will continue to go down.
Yeah, of course. That makes sense. So one of the most annoying questions I always got from investors was like what the moat is. And my view was always like, look, if you're a startup, the moat keeps you out of the market. So like, it's a good thing there's not a moat today, and it's something that kind of comes with time. Do you have a point of view? I mean, I know it's early, but like over time, where might that come from in your market? Like how might that develop over time?
I think that there are two big ones to call out. So one is a deep technical moat that especially comes from product data too. And so here I think the search analogy comes through again, where the story of search was there were dozens of people on the starting line. It was this very visible large market. A few people start to pull away because they build a better product. And then you get lots of people using your thing. And then that is an important input for them making the product better, because you can see what search results are people clicking on, what are they bouncing back from. That helps you make the search ranking better. And I think you have that many times over in our market, where part of the purpose of the product is to help you write code faster. We can see where AI is helping them, where AI is not helping them, and then use that to make the product better. You can then make fantastic tab models that you can only make if you have lots of distribution. And so that's already played out on the tab front. Actually, we're on like our 5th or 6th generation model there. And a really important input to that is product data and having lots of people using Cursor. And I think that that's going to continue to play out too in kind of these new areas of more the agent side of things. And already there, the Cursor agent is like this chimera of both the API models, which we're excited about and excited to see them continue to get better, and then also custom models working with them around them. Another one I do think is more normal team level, like software dynamics, where right now this is which code editor you use is a little bit of a single player decision. I think it'll start to become more team level, and it will start to become more and more a decision about how your team works. And we're already starting to see that in the product, where now you can go beyond just running a one-on-one agent locally in Cursor to basically spinning off multiple agents in parallel in the cloud, and spin off agents from your team communication system, and also run agents on all issues in your issue tracker, and that starts to become much more of a team level decision. And then I think over time, what's going to happen is, in the far future of like 2030, I don't think humans are going to be like staring at TypeScript and Rust and Go. I think that things are going to be a little bit higher level. And so the store of state, I think, is going to change too.
Someone who was at the Sun Valley conference recently told me that Sam from OpenAI was talking to the group there and said that he thought that Anthropic was not the real challenger to OpenAI, that you guys were. And I'm curious, I don't know if that had made it back to you, but
No.
what's your take on that?
Well, honored. Honored that he even knows about us.
Not that you needed help. I'm sure it helps with your fundraising.
No. Honored. Don't know the details of that, and we're excited to use kind of the best of what all the API providers have to offer. And I actually think that it's a lot of people talk about, which model's best, one model this, one model that. There's already different model SKUs that are developing that we use in different ways in Cursor. So we use really small, fast models in parts of the product behind the scenes. We use kind of the Sonnet GPT-4 type sort of profile of speed and cost too. That's, when people think about the coding agent that they're using in the foreground, it's that model plus a bunch of custom models around it. And then we also use the slow, expensive models in the background, especially for more this world of you're running multiple things in parallel, you're less working kind of one-on-one synchronously with the agent. And I think more of those SKUs, amongst the like n-dimensional matrix of like speed and intelligence and long context ability and like computer using ability, there will be multiple models that we will use. And so OpenAI is a really important partner of ours there. And I think that there are other companies that we continue to be really excited to partner with there. Our end goal is to automate coding and make it so that people can build anything they want on computers. And so it feels very different and maybe complementary with what OpenAI is doing.
I don't know, you fast forward like 2 years, how much of like the models that we end up using when we're using Cursor are developed by Cursor versus developed by third parties?
So far, we've monotonically just introduced more places where we're using our own models to improve things. I think that will continue. I think that the number of models being used in Cursor will also go up over time too. So it's not a zero-sum thing. It used to be that there was only kind of one way to use a model in Cursor, and now there's many different ways, many different types of models that are used behind the scenes, both to power the agent, to power tab, to power other things. So yeah, I don't think it's zero-sum. I do think that we're an early experiment in a company that's between being a normal software company and one of these foundation labs. And one thing that's been surprisingly useful for us there is developing our own models. And so it's something that we're investing in a ton and trying to do it in a way that isn't reinventing the wheel with some of the more general API models.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. That's it. That's all I got.
Thank you for having me.